Today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from Grace Hopper, Queen of Computer Code by Laurie Wallmark. With her trunks packed and her math books in hand, Grace left for Vassar College, an all-women's school. Some of her classmates took classes called Husbands and Wives and Motherhood, but not Grace. Her favorite subjects were math and physics. Grace did more in college than just study. Whenever there was fun or adventure to be had, she was always first in line. Her personal motto was dare and do. When a barnstormer came to town offering plane rides, Grace rushed to sign up. I squandered all my money. It cost $10 and went up in the plane. Does anyone know what that word there means? Squandered. Has anyone heard that word before? Well, if you are going to squander something, or if you've squandered something, it means that you've wasted it, or you've used it all up in a really reckless manner. So Grace felt like she was wasting her money on this thing, but she wanted to do it anyway. She pulled herself up into the seat behind the pilot, adjusted her goggles, and with a deafening roar, the propeller sputtered into action. The biplane rattled across the field and lifted off. With each loop-the-loop through the air, Grace's grin grew wider and wider. Because of Grace's hard work and intelligence, the other students respected her abilities. They often came to her for help with their studies. One day, her fellow students entered the room, only to see a bathtub filled to the brim with water. Grace invited a volunteer to step into the tub, clothes and all. Water sloshed over the edges and flooded the floor. The students burst into laughter. Grace explained the reason for this tidal wave. The volume of the student's body pushed out the same volume of water. The result? One soggy student wrapped in a towel and one math lesson never forgotten. When Grace moved on to graduate school at Yale University, there was only one other woman in her class. This didn't bother Grace in the least. Grace wanted to share her passion for math, so she took a job teaching at Vassar College. Her classes were always both practical and fun. Even though Grace loved teaching, America was now at war and needed the best mathematicians to design weapons. Patriotic Grace wanted to help her country, so she tried to enlist in the Navy. That proved to be a problem. Why do you think that it proves to be a problem that Grace wanted to enlist into the Navy? What could that problem be, you think? Our young people are the future. We must provide for them. Based on the Navy's requirements for new recruits at the time, Grace was too old and too skinny to enlist. She was 36 and weighed only 105 pounds. Grace could be very persuasive, however. It took her more than a year, but Grace convinced the Navy that they needed her. What would you have done if you had been in Grace's shoes? Would you have let the Navy tell you no and just moved on? Or would you have fought for it like Grace did? What do you think you would have done? Faithfulness in all things. My motto is, you see, the world will be a better place when all agree with me. Because of her superior math skills, Grace was assigned to write programs for one of the first computers ever built, the Mark I. Only a few people had ever programmed before, so she had to learn how to do it on her own. One late summer day, a coworker burst into Grace's office. The new computer, the Mark II, had stopped working. She gasped. This had never happened before, not with any of her programs. Grace thought that it had to be a prank. After all, she loved playing jokes on her coworkers. Maybe the other engineers were getting their revenge. But they weren't. The computers really wasn't working. For hours, Grace and her team reviewed the code, but could find no error. It was as if the green ceramic gremlin that always sat in Grace's office had come to life and sneaked into the machine to make mischief. That was it. Maybe the problem wasn't in her program. Maybe it was in the computer. Grace jumped to her feet and hurried down the hall. The immense computer room usually thrummed with the click of metal switches and the whir of paper tape. Today was all silent. Is that what our computers look like today? They take up an entire room? Is that different than what we have when we use the computers? Right? It is, isn't it? Can you imagine using a computer like that? I couldn't. I have insatiable curiosity. It's solving problems. Every time you solve a problem, another one shows up behind it. That's the challenge. Grace and her team searched everywhere for the problem. Grace used her pocket mirror to check inside the machine. She angled it this way and that. No matter where the engineers looked, they didn't see anything wrong. No loose wires or stray sparks, not even a naughty gremlin. The engineers were stumped. They had checked everything. What could be causing the problem? Then someone saw it. A moth was trapped inside, blocking a switch from working properly. One of the engineers borrowed Grace's eyebrow tweezers and removed the dead moth. The computer started up again with no problem. Being good scientists, Grace and her team taped the moth into the logbook to record their unusual finding. They added a note. First actual case of a computer bug being found. Ever since then, because of Grace's sense of humor, computer glitches have been called bugs. Early computers didn't understand letters or words, only programs, filled with lines and lines of ones and zeros. As Grace worked on a brand new computer called the UNIVAC 1, she thought about ways to make programming even easier. Not everyone was as comfortable thinking in numbers as she. Grace wanted anyone to be able to use computers, not just scientists and engineers. Grace glanced at the wall clock she had rigged to run backward. It reminded her to use her imagination. Unconventional thinking was often the key to solving problems. Humans are allergic to change. They like to say, "We've always done it this way." I try to fight that. Back here there was a word, unconventional. Do we know what that word means? Well, if something is unconventional, or we use the word unconventional, it's used to describe something that is not usually done, or something that is done in a different way than normal. Does Grace act and work in unconventional ways? Why or why not? Let's keep going. To allow her brain a chance to consider new ideas, Grace took a break from programming. She doodled cartoons of gremlins and dragons and other fantastical characters. While she drew, she asked herself questions. Why should people have to learn computer language? Why couldn't computers learn people language? They could. Grace invented a program that let people use words to tell the computer what to do. Her program, named Flowmatic, included simple English commands like multiply. Flowmatic translated multiply and the other commands into instructions the computer could understand. Let people write their programs in English. It was common sense. This was much easier than programming pages of ones and zeros. With the help of Grace's program, she and her coworkers were able to write code more quickly and with fewer errors. When Grace was 60 years old, the Navy forced her to retire. They said she was too old to serve. It was the saddest day of my life. Within a few months, they realized their mistake and asked her to return for a short 6-month assignment. This short assignment lasted for 20 years. Grace, now an admiral, finally retired from the Navy for the second time at age 80. For almost 50 years, Grace Hopper, the queen of computer code, dedicated her life to solving computer problems. No wonder people called her Amazing Grace. I really like this author. She has written 2 other books. Both of them are about really cool women in history that have had a lot to do with making machines that we use. Like Grace Hopper. She helped make computers easier for everyone to use, even if they weren't a brilliant scientist.